We have Reborn versus Psycho, and we have the Thresh Nasus going into Shyvana Asol. Oh, this is a matchup I know all too well. I would give the slight edge, I would say, to Shyvana Asol if they're running that 3x Hush in their deck. That can come in huge, as well as Concerted Strike. You just need the answers, honestly, to deal with two Nasus. About two Nasus is what you could expect to see. If you have those answers, you're feeling pretty good from the Psycho side.
And as we lead off here, Reborn NA is definitely considering that as well. If the Hush is coming through to shut down my Nasus, that forces me to play a very aggressive early game, right? Sometimes the deck can kick back, maybe take a turn off to draw with Spirit Leech, but Reborn is going to probably just try to smork as much as possible here in the early game. Already has Dune Keeper on turn 1 with the attack token, and Psycho without Dragon Chow or the like is going to take 4 damage right off the bat.
And just a heads up for you guys in chat, again, we do have a Shard mismatch from Psycho, so we will be unable to get their hand now unless they advance even farther into the tournament. We may be able to get that through Discord, but right now we are seeing it fully from the Reborn side, and looking like a fairly strong opener, very low and nice curve here, curving out very well. Going to be setting up for a big swing on turn 3, it looks like.
And this is what you want to see as Nasus Thresh. If the game goes too long, you have to start worrying about the big dragons just bullying out your lower stat lines, the Hush shutting down your Nasus, and just like perhaps a lot of healing coming through to stabilize the opponent. And so Reborn is getting the aggressive curve that they want, and only a Protege coming down to hold the fort. And even if there is one blocker, you're still getting tons of damage around the sides. And with potentially a Merciless Hunter coming down a little bit later to pull that, I think that, with a couple key top decks, Reborn could close this out. Psycho is feeling a lot of pressure so early in the game.
Duckling, how are you feeling looking at this board right now? It's looking pretty wide versus pretty narrow.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I mean, just like Scarzig said there, that's pretty much exactly what you want as the Nasus Thresh here. You want to try to get in as much damage and as much pressure as you can while the curve is weak on Psycho's side. Generally speaking, they tend to be kind of light on the 1 and 2 drops, and even the 3 drops to an extent. And then turn 4 is where they almost consistently always have the Fangs or Shyvana, or sometimes the 5/4
Sunforger as
unit.
well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
we're looking
this-
at 2x Star Shaping as well from the Psycho side, and a full set of Sunforger. Only one of the Fangs and one of Radiant. So, yes, there is lifesteal available, but not actually the full package that could be there. So we will see how this progresses, as the Fangs will need to do a whole lot to stabilize Psycho.
You see this sometimes in tournaments, right, where people will tech a little bit less against aggro, expecting a triple aggro lineup to be a little less likely. So the importance for lifesteal, not as much, and like more so trying to take like a greedier approach to be better off into the more control versus control matchups that you're more used to seeing in tournaments.
And Psycho even holding back the Fangs right now. I think this telegraphs perhaps no sharp sight. Trying to perhaps get a double dip with a single combat or concerted on the next round. If Reborn is unable to force this Fangs to take a trade to get off of the board, that extra 6 or 9 HP worth of healing could get Psycho into a safe position. The aggression is starting to fade away here. You've got the Spirit Leeches ready to go to draw, but they're going to be a little bit too slow when you've already committed to this aggressive line. Reborn even taking the time now from a position like this to develop rather than open attacking is becoming riskier and riskier. But Merciless Hunter on the Fangs to draw that lifesteal to the bottom of the attack could be the lethal that Reborn's looking for. We'll see how Psycho responds.
Yeah, we definitely need a single, a concerted. A Star Shaping would work as well, but it wouldn't be ideal. You really want to be affecting this board in a more substantial way, narrowing down the attackers. We see a development of the 2/3 Sentinel. Pretty strong blocker here. Not going to be able to stop that Fearsome, of course, but may be able to get some work done on that 4/1. Going wider on the Reborn side, we expect to see the Butcher come down as well this turn, potentially on the Sand Soldier, just looking for that maximum damage swing.
It is always important, something to consider too here, and I think this is another reason too why we see Reborn developing. Radiant Guardian is being run by Psycho here, and if we open attack, that could be a big setup for the Radiant Guardian, which is always a bit of a scare. So we want to try to put max pressure on to force Psycho to use some of that mana to tap below Radiant range, like we see him doing here.
Yeah, and there's the pass back from Psycho. I think this does definitely tell us that there is the combat trick for the Fangs, trying to get as much healing as possible. And Reborn has to consider, do I want to save this ephemeral attacker with the Sand Soldier in order to just kind of get a free pull? Or am I going to try to put even more damage in with the Ravenous Butcher? And goes for it.
I like that play a lot, actually, Scarzig, because if you leave the Sand Soldier up, it does allow the Fangs to get an effective single combat off on that Sand Soldier and still live, so getting that double dip of lifesteal. Whereas now, if it goes for a single, unless it's backed up by a Sharp Sight or something, you are going to be losing that Fangs and not getting the double lifesteal. So I like the play there from Reborn. Here's a Concerted, still getting that double dip of lifesteal, and even though it's a big swing, actually gaining 1 HP in the process.
Yeah, it drops down to 3, then back up to 6. Reborn's hand is looking pretty thin. If Psycho, however, does not have a unit or additional threats to play on top of this swing, you know, Reborn maybe finally has the window of opportunity to set up the Spirit Leech and go for broke. Blighted Caretaker, I believe, is still a 2-of in this variant, and it's so important for pushing this aggressive game plan. Vile Feast off the top.
Looks like he's leading with the Vile for the sacrifice. Makes a lot of sense here. He really needs to find his champions.
He actually could go for a Hunter play, though, as well, right? What if he gives it vulnerable pulls with the Spider on the end?
Yeah,
that's what he's going for. Hoping for no star shaping, no combat trick, and if they don't have it on the side of Psycho, it's looking like it could be game.
Yeah, just kind of all in here.
I do like this play, yeah?
No hesitation, committing to that line and swinging in. Reborn trying to take game 1 off of Psycho here.
Oh.
And we find the combat trick to live at 1 HP.
Wow, this is intense. And this every time it comes down to the wire like this. You think Nasus Thresh just needs to sneak through that little bit of extra damage to close out. Demacia Targon pulls off a miracle. So I'm not going to count Psycho out just yet, but this Spirit Leech I think is perfectly timed. You've cashed in pretty much your entire board. You've done the work, and now you're just looking for a Nasus, looking for an Atrocity, something to close out here in Psycho now. Praying for Radiant Guardian, praying perhaps for another copy of the Fangs, because these big units will help you keep things even, but Nasus Thresh specializes in developing a wide board and still managing to get that damage around the sides.
Yeah, well played from Psycho there. Go for it, Duck.
Sure. Every single Inconcerted that we force out now, too, is going to be one less answer to the Atrocity later. And with how low the health is here, we don't necessarily have to Atrocity a Nasus, so Hush might not be as much of a concern. So really limiting the options there. Maybe just like a Star Shaping to survive if we're not Atrocitying a Nasus.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like that play from Reborn. They're saying if they have it, they have it. It's in the name, NA. That is the play style. And in some games, guys, they just won't have it. So playing for those win conditions when you have them is a good line to take. Now we see the development of a second Eclipse into the 10-10 Nasus. That's that key stat point where it's threatening getting the spell shield if it gets that hit in.
And at this point, yeah, you just have to try to keep the board as even as possible. You're clearing the Ravenous Butcher, but because of the Cursed Keeper, you know, if you pop that open with another Spirit Leech or a Ravenous Butcher, you're still getting 2 attackers for the price of 1. And the Demacia Targon, when you're this late in the game, all the plays you want to make are just 1 big unit, and at 1 HP, you have to try to maintain board parity against Nasus Thresh, and that is a tall order. Rite of Calling going to be cashed in here.
Was this attack a bait, or is the Psycho saying that he doesn't have Hush here? What do you guys think?
That's a good question. I mean, that's a good question. Because if he does have Hush, if an Atro comes down, that Nasus is still killing Psycho at 1 HP, right? I guess anything is at this point, but...
Yeah.
Interesting tech choice to note as well on the side of Psycho. There is a 1-of Sunburst in the deck, and that can handle a Nasus without Spell Shield.
Interesting. Maybe hoping for the Sunburst. Rite of Calling pulls a second Thresh.
And now he's hoping for the second Nasus there, so that he can use the bonk.
Definitely.
But here it is. Another Psycho is still in trouble, where we have this full board, and you're not able to keep up, right? You're still down 1 blocker.
Yep. So there has to be a combat trick here on the side of Psycho.
Yeah, there's even the prey that you don't have to block. The 0 attack just being presented here.
Asserting dominance, not missing the opportunity.
Usually that would be a troll play, and players do that as sort of a cheeky hello. Oh, but it is being used actually as a vulnerable challenger. Prey really getting the job done here for a 0-1.
The giant dragon is getting distracted by this little ghost butterfly. It's just off to the side right now. So right now we've got a 2v4 Nasus. Any of these connecting with the Nexus will spell game. Psycho needs to chump and have 2 combat tricks, right? I think there's still 1 more concerted in a single combat here.
Correct.
Even Judgment is not enough.
There is no Judgment as well being run in the list, so
Oof.
that is not a concern you have to worry about, not getting that Judgment bluff potential.
Yeah, I really like this full swing here. Even a good call from Reborn last turn, not sacrificing the 1-1 there. Just keeping that up as like a consistent threat. So
we see a concerted, and the Blighted Caretaker is going to hit for lethal on 1 HP Gamer from the Psycho side. The first game is taken off of the 6-0 monster by Reborn NA.
Taking this game 1. This is played out exactly how you wanted it to, right? You had the early aggressive curve, you had the merciless hunters in order to force through those mid-game developments, and only the Fangs came down to heal just a bit. Missed out on the Radiant Guardians there, no star shaping as well, and if you play that matchup over and over again, I don't think you can get a better outcome as the Nasus Thresh player. And just as you're about to run out of gas, the Spirit Leashes were also fantastically timed, right? For those defensive turns where not a lot was going on and you were just looking to draw more tools and more pressure. So well played from Reborn there, and we'll see if Psycho can reverse it, perhaps try to take this 2-0 and maintain that undefeated streak here in day 2.
Yeah, that's kind of the secret key to success, I would say, in the Thresh Nasus deck is just all of that access to draw. And between Glimpse Beyond and between Spirit Leech, just when you think they're out of gas, they're able to refill and build a wide board up once again. And we saw in that game as well how the stabilization was right there for Psycho. I mean, the big units were coming down, the combat tricks were in hand, and we were just, a turn or 2 away from doing exactly what Demacia Targon wants to do, dropping an Asol and presenting those big threats, but it didn't happen in time, and we are jumping in here to Draven Ezreal versus Shyvana Asol. What do you think about this matchup, Duckling?
Oh, I mean, this isn't a matchup that I've played too much of, to be honest. I think you'll have a better take on this one as the Shyvana Asol / Zoe Asol gamer yourself here.
There is a lot of ways for the Ezreal Draven to tech for certain metagames, for against certain lists that have become more popular. If Reborn has been considering a lot of Demacia Targon, we would be seeing some more answers such as Scorched Earth in this list, or maybe even I've seen some do like double guillotine these days. And taking a closer look at the build, it is just 2 copies of Scorched Earth. You do have the means to maybe answer a couple of those bigger threats as we get to the later game, and 2 copies of Captain Farron. So I think that this one does have a little bit more of that late game tilt that Ezreal Draven used to be known for. But right now, we've got 2 Improbulators in the hand, and we're already off to a great start with the Draven attacking here on round 4.
Yeah, I would say that Improbulator is the swing card in this matchup. If Draven Ezreal's side doesn't have an Improbulator during the game or isn't able to stack it up early, I would say pretty heavily favored for the Shyvana Asol side. But if they do have those Tri-Beams early, it can be a devastating blow, removing one of your large units. You're unable to interact with it, and then obviously creating a swing of a large unit on the Ezreal Draven side. So it can just completely turn the game on its head, and the fact that we have access to 2 of those in the hand of Reborn already, and we're stacking them with all these 3-cost units in hand, this is every Ezreal Draven player's dream right now.
And
Yeah, I mean,
the
this
stun to stop the lifesteal.
This seems pretty much like the perfect hand here for Reborn. Between the double Improbulators, we have the Ezreal and the Draven on curve. Lots of 3-drops, like you said, the stun effect to stop the healing. This is exactly what you want to see. We even have the Flock here to potentially finish off the 5-4 or maybe deal with the Shyvana.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, without the Tri-Beams, I do like playing this matchup from the Demacia Targon side, but this hand is looking like a bit of a monster right now for Reborn. These Tri-Beams are already at 3 apiece. We're easily going to be able to buff them up to that 5, 6, 7, even 8, depending on how long he wants to hold them, mark.
And this matchup, it's interesting, where Demacia Targon tends to be able to present enough threats where you begin to run the Ezreal Draven just out of resources, as they have to kind of answer everything that has the threat to snowball. Screeching Dragon, Shyvana, even like a Radiant Guardian sticking around for several rounds. Ezreal Draven, if you get to the super late game, you're still at, 18 or 20 HP. They have such a difficult time closing out from that position, but if they can whittle you down to 10 or 12, it feels a lot more comfortable. So stopping the Sunforger is massively important, and Reborn thinking about how I want to play this next setup here.
This is an interesting decision here on the side of Reborn. We wish we had access to an Axe already so we could open with a Sump, deciding to get rid of a Static Shock. I do like that play. You're a little bit forced out of an open with Draven due to that 4 health on Shyvana, and we chose not to flock Shyvana last turn when there was still single and sharp sight mana available. So opting to go for the Sump and maybe make a bit of an attack a little more threatening here. But we do see the lifesteal coming down, so Demacia Targon saying maybe I can stabilize from this position now.
It's really just about keeping up, right, with the board state. The Ezreal Draven can develop a lot of chumps, and that's typically how they further their way to get to the late game. It is just getting a lot of spiders, with the House Spider and the Sump Dredger. But this is what Demacia feasts upon. All the dragons love these small attackers that they can bully with their better stat lines and just kind of hit through. And Psycho has been doing a fantastic job of developing just enough pressure to keep Reborn down from developing too much, while also, bluffing that sharp sight, forcing Reborn to think twice about putting this removal out. And by Reborn respecting that card, letting the Shyvana live, who knows if she's going to flip here in a round or two, and then once you're generating those extra strafing strikes, it will be impossible for Reborn to get anything meaningful to stay in play. And right now, can't even go for the risk of an attack.
Yeah, it just shows the emphasis on how much of a value engine Draven is in this deck, able to create those axes for Rummage, discard fodder for Sump Dredgers. You really wish you had access to that going into the attack. I do like the pass from Reborn there. It is just too scary with all that mana available. And now Demacia Targon saying, Psycho saying, we have enough leeway on the board, I'm feeling comfortable enough to drop the Eclipse Dragon and look for the Aesol next turn. And that is kind of a deciding factor in this matchup as well. If an Aesol comes down onto the board and is able to stick, generating that free value every turn, that can be hard to deal with on the side of Reborn, especially when we talk about those big elusive units with Spell Shield or the Immortal Fire that can be reborn once. So those are some units to look out for here that Psycho may be wanting to go for.
Ezreal Draven absolutely despises having to kill those big units with Spell Shield. It takes too many resources away from them that they don't want to spend. And Reborn actually going to put the Culling Strike on the stack alongside the Tri-Beam. The Culling Strike resolving first will put one extra tick up on the Tri-Beam Improbulator to cover the spread of Sharp Sight on Shyvana here.
This is a bit of a YOLO move, I would say. If there is a Sharp Sight that comes down on the Fangs, there's no way to deal with that from the side of Reborn. And then that fizzles the Culling and allows for a nice swing of lifesteal. You don't care what a 5-4 Fangs trades into. That's always going to be a good trade in terms of the life gain. So it's a bit of a do or die, do you have it, do you not moment.
Definitely here. Yeah, and I mean, because we have the second Tri-Beam Probulator, I see why he's using this one at 4, but we're definitely going to need to use that second one to try and kill, at the very least, the Eclipse Dragon here, and hopefully the opponent has no Aesol.
Yeah, I do like not swinging with the 5-3 there as well. If you do have an Aesol, you do need to keep that power on your side of the board and try to be threatening level. Ezreal Draven is good at effectively removing units, so that is harder to do with Aesol than it is into some other decks, but we do just see the development of another Eclipse Dragon on Daybreak, which tells me there still may be access to Aesol on the side of Psycho.
Earlier, we did also see Moonsilver for that first Eclipse Dragon, allowing it to be played at a discount, and I believe it activated the Nightfall effect. And when you have that extra card generation in Targon Demacia, 1 or 2 extra threats available for you to develop can spell the difference between victory and defeat, right? Where they just don't have those tools any longer. Ezreal already being leveled here just because of everything that Psycho has been throwing onto the board to keep this onslaught at bay, you know, has provided plenty of targets for Ezreal. So now we've got an elusive unit. We can see the way the blocks are going through here, potentially no Sharp Sight. Finally, a combat trick is being presented from Psycho, and we'll see if Mystic Shot will just be cycled right now to get some value out of the Ezreal, and it's being held.
Yeah, I do
Oh,
like
that's a second
holding
Ezreal,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I do like holding it here. You have so many more ways to trigger the Ezreal effect once you drop it. All of these spells available. And that was, again, they needed to have that single there or it just gets absolutely out of control for the Ezreal Draven side. But it already is starting to look a bit out of control here as Reborn takes the reins of this game and is really deciding the pace of it.
I like this flock here. I think we're not putting the opponent on Sharp Sight because it's pretty likely they would have used it last turn there. Not too much of a reason not to. Yeah, I think this is a good time to get that out before they have a chance to top deck it.
And here it is, a little bit more lifesteal. This was something that Psycho was really missing out on in the previous game and throughout the game so far. The first Solari Sunforger did get stopped by the Arachnoid Sentry's stun, but it looks like there is a clear path for this one to swing through. Reborn potentially could just go for a Sump Dredger to cycle, look for something to take this away. It's difficult to justify going for the 7 mana Tri-Beam Improbulator here. Just because you can get so many bad outcomes if you were desperate to answer the Solari Sunforger without something like a Captain Farron in hand to have a more, I would say, guaranteed finisher all ready to go. Then Reborn is just going to try to block this unit as best he can and rely perhaps on this second Ezreal to do the heavy lifting.
So we can see a Matron off this Improbulator. What do you guys think?
Duckling, we said you're not allowed to predict, buddy. Uh-oh. I think chat is probably hoping for boat number 2. I do... Oh, interesting that Reborn chooses to buff it up to 9. I do think the 8 power is maybe more consistent in terms of the units that you hit, but what could we be looking for here on 9 power, you guys think?
The 9 drop that always comes to mind first for me is Bright Steel formation. Reborn wants to get these, maybe wants to get a big board of barriers in order to just keep things alive and pressure the dragons in the field of combat here, rather than relying purely on removal at this stage of the game. And Psycho now, and also, also notably, by buffing this up to 9, it does cover Sharp Sight for the Eclipse Dragon to survive. So Reborn actually prioritizing killing this final threat over trying to get a maximum value unit generation off of the Tri-Beam.
We have Ladros 2 as a possible pull from this, which is really nice. So
yeah,
couple
Ladros
good
is
9-drop
always
targets.
very scary, I would say, as well, right? It's just that constant value generation that Psycho would have to spend a Hush and then a combat trick or a unit through a block to stop that just onslaught of Nexus damage being lost every turn. But 8 damage there, and we get Cadrigan. Oh boy, the worst drop in the game, but this is looking like a great open swing, so that 9 stat line is looking fine right now. It is enough, unless there's a star shaping here. No star shaping coming down, and Reborn closes out the set against Psycho, 2-0ing the Shyvana Aesol deck. Wow.